My father introduced me to my sister's fiancé with a smile that was really a knife. "She's just a guest," he said, waving his hand toward me like I was nothing. The coward who abandoned her squad. Everyone laughed. My mother laughed. My sister laughed. Even the caterers standing nearby smiled awkwardly, not knowing what else to do. I stood there in my simple blue dress, saying nothing, because I had learned a long time ago that silence was stronger than any argument. Then the fiancé stepped forward. A tall man in a sharp black uniform, medals on his chest, posture like steel. A Navy SEAL commander, my father had proudly announced earlier, as if his daughter's future husband's rank could make up for his own daughter's supposed shame. The commander smiled politely and reached out to shake my hand. That's when he saw it. The scar on my wrist. His smile disappeared. His hand froze mid-shake. His eyes went wide, and his face turned pale, like he had just seen a ghost. Then, in a shaking voice, in front of my entire family, he asked the question that would change everything. "Ma'am, are you the Black Panther of the Marine Corps?" The room went silent. And that silence was the beginning of the end for my father's lies. The golden daughter and the forgotten one. My name is Claire. I have one older sister, Danielle, who is always the golden child in our house. Danielle got straight A's without trying. Danielle was homecoming queen. Danielle married well, dated well, smiled the way our parents wanted her to smile. I was different. Quiet. Focused. I didn't care about parties or prom dresses. From the time I was 16, I had one goal: to serve my country. My father hated that decision. He was a businessman who valued status, money, and appearances above everything else. To him, the military was for people who couldn't succeed in the real world. He wanted a daughter who would marry a doctor or a lawyer, not one who wore combat boots. When I told him I was joining the Marine Corps after high school, he didn't yell. He just looked at me with disappointment and said, "Don't expect me to be proud of this." I left anyway. The years that followed were the hardest of my life. Boot camp broke me down and built me back up. I earned my place, inch by inch, sweat by sweat. I deployed overseas. I served in operations I still cannot fully speak about, even now. And then one mission went wrong. My squad was ambushed. Communications were cut off. Half of my team was pinned down under heavy fire in a location that support couldn't reach in time. I made a decision that night. A decision that saved 11 lives, but also left me with a scar on my wrist, a permanent reminder of the moment I nearly didn't make it back. When I returned home on medical leave, broken but alive, my father didn't ask about my recovery. He didn't ask what happened. He simply said, "I hope you're done with this phase now." He never knew the truth about what happened that night, because I never told him, and that silence would soon collide with a truth he could not escape. The insult at the engagement party. 3 years later, I was invited, reluctantly, it seemed, to my sister's engagement party. I almost didn't go, but Danielle called me, crying, begging me to come. "Please, Claire. I don't care what Dad says. You're my sister." So I went. I wore a simple dress, no medals, no uniform, nothing that would reveal who I truly was. I wanted to support my sister, not create a scene. The party was full of business partners, family friends, and important guests. My father moved through the room like a king holding court, introducing people with exaggerated pride. Then Danielle's fiancé arrived, a decorated Navy SEAL commander named Ethan Cross. Tall, respected, clearly a man of discipline and honor. My father's chest puffed up instantly. Finally, a son-in-law worthy of bragging rights. He pulled me forward to introduce me, but instead of pride, his words were laced with mockery. "This is my other daughter, Claire," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "She's just a guest." The coward who abandoned her squad. Gasps. Whispers. Laughter from people who didn't know any better. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't argue. I had spent years learning that explaining myself to people who already decided to hate me was a waste of breath. Danielle looked embarrassed, but said nothing. My mother sipped her wine like this was normal dinner conversation. Then Ethan reached out his hand to shake mine, still smiling politely, clearly trying to be respectful despite the awkward introduction. That's when everything changed. The moment Ethan's hand touched mine, his eyes dropped to my wrist. The scar. Jagged, unmistakable, shaped by shrapnel that nearly ended my life during that ambush 3 years ago. His expression shifted from polite to shocked in less than a second. He knew that scar. Not personally, but he knew of it. Because in certain classified circles within the special operations community, there was a story. A legendary story about a Marine officer who took command when her unit's leadership was taken out, who fought through impossible odds to save her team, and who was given a call sign by the men she rescued. Black Panther. It wasn't just a nickname. It was a designation earned through blood, courage, and sacrifice, a name whispered with respect among those who understood what true heroism looked like on the battlefield. Ethan had heard the story from a mutual contact years ago, though he had never met the woman behind the legend. Until now. His hand trembled slightly as he asked the question that shattered the room's laughter into stunned silence. Ma'am, are you the Black Panther of the Marine Corps? Every conversation in the room stopped. My father's smug smile disappeared instantly. My mother nearly dropped her wine glass. Danielle turned to me, eyes wide with confusion and disbelief. I looked at Ethan, and for the first time in years, I let the truth speak instead of my silence. Yes, I said quietly. That's me. What happened next unfolded like a storm breaking through years of buried tension. My father tried to defend himself, stumbling over excuses. I didn't know. You never explained the details. How was I supposed to know you were some kind of hero? You weren't supposed to know, I said, my voice steady. Because a real father doesn't need proof of heroism to respect his child. You should have been proud of me the moment I chose to serve, regardless of medals or nicknames. The guests around us shifted uncomfortably, sensing the shift in power in that room. The man who once ruled every conversation with confidence now stood exposed, humbled by his own daughter's quiet strength. Danielle stepped forward and hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Claire. I should have defended you. I should have asked more questions instead of just laughing along. I hugged her back. You didn't know the truth either. None of this is your fault. Ethan turned to my father, his voice firm but respectful. Sir, in the military, we're taught that true strength isn't about appearances or status. It's about sacrifice, discipline, and showing up when it matters most, even when no one is watching. Your daughter embodies that in every sense of a word. My father had no response. For the first time in his life, the man who always had something clever to say was left completely speechless. The turning point, reclaiming my truth. In the weeks that followed, word of what happened at the engagement party spread through our extended family and social circles. People who once dismissed me as the military daughter who couldn't hold a real job now looked at me differently. But more importantly, something inside me shifted too. I realized I no longer needed my father's approval to feel proud of who I was. I had spent years quietly absorbing his judgment, letting his disappointment shape how I saw myself. That engagement party became the moment I stopped shrinking myself to fit into his expectations. My mother reached out to me privately, apologizing for years of silence and indifference. I should have asked more questions, she admitted. I should have been curious about my daughter's life instead of assuming the worst. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Years of hurt don't disappear overnight. But it was a start, an honest, uncomfortable, necessary start. As for my father, he remained mostly quiet in the weeks that followed. Pride is a difficult thing to swallow, especially for a man who built his identity around being right. But one evening he called me. His voice was different, smaller, more hesitant than I had ever heard it. Claire, he said, I owe you an apology. I let my own assumptions blind me to who you really are. I'm sorry for every time I made you feel small. It wasn't a magical fix to years of pain, but it was something. A crack in the wall he had built around his pride. The woman I became. Danielle's wedding took place a few months later. This time, when my father introduced me to family friends, his words were different. This is my daughter, Claire, he said, his voice steady with something I hadn't heard before, real pride. She served our country as a Marine, and she saved lives most of us will never fully understand. I felt something shift inside me. Not triumph, not vindication, just quiet peace. Because in the end, the truth always finds its way to the surface. No amount of mockery, dismissal, or misunderstanding can erase the reality of who a person truly is. I didn't need my father's approval to know my worth. I had already proven it to myself, in moments of chaos and fear, when I chose to protect the people who depended on me. But watching him finally see me, truly see me, was healing in a way I never expected. This story isn't just about a scar or a nickname. It's about the danger of judging people based on assumptions instead of truth. So often, we mock what we don't understand. We laugh at things simply because we never took the time to ask questions, to listen, to truly see the people in front of us. Real strength isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention or recognition. Sometimes, real strength stands quietly in the corner of a room, absorbing insults with grace, waiting patiently for the truth to reveal itself. If there's one lesson to take from Claire's story, it's this. Never assume you know someone's full story based on surface-level judgments. Behind every quiet person, every failure, every misunderstood choice, there might be a story of courage you never expected. And sometimes, the people we underestimate the most are the ones who end up saving us all.